All right, I wanted to get my own 2 cents in here on this whole Nexus of Fate garbage. I think we all know that Nexus of Fate is garbage. In fact, there are threads on the Magic Arena subreddit saying, hey, can we ban the threads asking to ban Nexus of Fate, because everyone knows that it is an awful card, and it is just not fun to play against, and it just needs to be gotten rid of. So this is a situation I've found myself in a couple of times. In fact, I think I've seen Nexus of Fate played 3 times in total. The first time, I had no idea what it was doing, and about 4 cycles in, I was just like very interested to see how far it could go. And when he started using Primal Wellspring to duplicate it, and then duplicate it again, and he had just had 4 or 5 extra turns queued up, and I was running out of cards in my deck, I just conceded because there's just no way to win against that. But at the same time, in that deck, he was also running with the Teferi, so at the same time as he was infinite turning, he was exiling everything that I had, and surely would have eventually done something to actually knock out my life total. It was the first time that I played against. The second time was against a mill deck, using things you see here, Drowned Secret, Psychic Corrosion, that sort of thing. This was before Ravnica Allegiances came out, and so, as soon as it started, I realized what was happening, and he played his second Nexus of Fate, and I said, all right, fine, I'm done. So this is the third time that it happened. This time, however, I was actually extremely excited when this happened. So initially, he was playing only blue lands, and so naturally I assumed, okay, he's going to have a lot of counters in his hand, I'm going to play a little safe. What I'm playing here is sort of a meme deck inspired by the Hyper Cancer deck that kind of went viral recently. Basically revolves around getting Primal Wellsprings and Azor's Gateway flipped, and then using Sanguine Sacrament to gain infinite life, playing in a Johnny's Welcome, and then playing March of the Multitudes for however much mana you choose. I've played it for as much as 150 and had it triplicated, and it actually broke the game. So generally, I will play it for what you see here. I duplicated it and I played it for 11, so I had 22 out there. But he got those artifacts to basically make the minions completely useless. So I was like, all right, well, fine. I will draw myself a Cleansing Nova, just cleanse everything. Sacrifice a Mortal Sun, a Johnny's Welcome. I don't need this anymore. I've got enough life. Surely at some point he's going to play like a Nezahal or something, and it's going to be like, okay, that's his win condition. He's gotten rid of everything, and he's milled my deck, and he's going to play the Nezahal, and then he's just going to wait until that knocks me out. Or he's going to play Teferi, or he's going to play a Johnny, or he's going to play something to get creatures out or tokens. And then the Nexus started happening. When the Psychic Corrosion and Drowned Secrets was happening, I was like, okay, so he's going to mill me, and he's going to have a lot of, draws. He's going to play Revitalize, which I had seen a few times. He's Ixalaning my permanents, and so it's fine. It's actually an ideal matchup for this deck because, as you've probably seen by now, I have Gaia's Blessing. Gaia's Blessing is the mill shield, and I have 3 of them, and all 3 of them are in my deck. So I can't be milled. So at this point, I'm just like, okay, I'm waiting for him. Maybe he's really unlucky and his Nezahal's at the bottom of his deck, or he's Planeswalker, or whatever. I just want to see what is his win condition, and it took me about 5 minutes to realize that his win condition was nothing. Technically his win condition was mill. I can't be milled, so his win condition is nothing. I can't die. And so the reason there's no audio from the game and I'm using music in the background is because I was actually conversing with some friends over Discord discussing this, because I had recently seen the video from Desolator Magic about how the player Witch King had gotten a temp ban for infinitely looping Nexus until the 2-hour mark when he was temp banned. Seen threads on Reddit where someone said he played for 3 hours of just mashing the spacebar to resolve things, and the opponent finally conceded and gave up. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to turn on Shadowplay. I'm going to start recording, and I'm going to see what happens. Like, how long is this going to go for? Like, I'm hungry. It's the evening. Dinner time's coming up. I want to go grab some food. Like, do I write a keyboard macro to just repeatedly smash the spacebar because Magic is stupid and requires you to resolve everything? I mean, I could play Vraska's Contempt on my own tokens to just gain some life and drain all of my cards, and then I'll never have to have priority again. But I thought this would be an interesting topic to bring up, an interesting time to talk about some of the other problems that I see with Magic Arena. Like, everybody knows Nexus is a problem, and there's many reasons, and they've all been said. In Paper Magic, I'm not super familiar with Paper Magic. I've really only played Magic Arena, but I have seen that apparently it is impossible to infinitely loop turns in Paper Magic. That is against the rules. If you play that in a tournament setting, you go down to your local wizard shop or your card store and you play Nexus of Fate, the judge will come by and tell you, sorry, no, you got to concede. It's like the rule in chess that if you make the same move multiple times, you just have to concede. Like, I've been in chess games where I've only had a knight, my opponent has been stuck with only his king, and at that point, the match is over. It's just a matter of how long it takes me to corner his king. And so, generally someone will be respectful enough to concede, but in this case, this guy he's not going to concede. And it does take a while, because I keep checking his deck every now and then. I see he's got cards left, so surely he's got something in there. He's got something to wipe the board. He's got a Cleansing Nova to wipe my tokens, and he's got, I don't know, something. I want to know, what is his win condition? And then he has one card left in his deck, and he sends his Immortal Sun back to his hand, and then I realize, no, he's got a single Nexus of Fate, and he's going to continue playing it. And he's just going to infinitely loop, because he can't kill me. But something that I thought may have been a win condition here was something that the Hypercancer video pointed out that is actually possible for me to do. I've actually done this before, and I think it's a very bad thing to do, which is why I did it. I was hoping to see if I get some videos to draw attention to it. And that's that while you have priority, your timer ticks down, obviously, but that timer continues ticking down even through animations. So every time Gaia's Blessing procs, I have priority, and then while Gaia's Blessing is shuffling my discard pile back in, or my graveyard back into my library, I still have priority, and my timer still ticks down. So he starts his turn, he starts psychic corrosioning my cards, I still have priority. My timer's ticking down. Gaia's Blessing procs, my timer ticks down. Gaia's Blessing procs again, my timer ticks down. It continues ticking down. Eventually, given enough time, I will lose a timeout. I've already lost 2 of them. As you see here, I only have 2 left. Eventually, I'm going to lose all my timeouts. And then when I'm completely timed out, well, then I'll no longer have priority for the rest of the turn, which is fine for me because I don't want priority anymore. The problem is that the next time I gain priority, on his next turn, my timer will tick down again. And if it ticks down twice, you concede. Or at least that's what I've seen. This happened when I was playing this deck, and I had Johnny's Welcomed for 150 and got 2 Primal Wellspring procs on it. So it's 450 tokens going out. A Johnny's Welcome takes about a second to resolve every single one. So it took roughly 4 minutes-ish to resolve that whole stack, and of course my opponent was completely timed out at that point, but it was his first time being timed out, so he just lost priority until his next turn. He played his next turn, and I guess he was as curious as I was to see what happened. I have my second March of Multitudes in my hand, and I marched and played another 450, and then as soon as it timed out, he lost. I don't know if that's because he managed to concede, or if it's because he timed out, but that is what I've heard, and in practice that's what I've seen, that you time out twice, you lose. So if that's this guy's win condition, I don't know if it is, but maybe he's trying to outlast me to the point where I time out twice and am forced to concede. This is the problem that I see with Nexus of Fate, and the problem that I see with actually the deck that I'm playing right now, which is kind of one of the reasons that I'm playing it, that losing to card mechanics is one thing. Losing to Fairy BS, losing to somebody playing a whole bunch of Stars of Extinction, getting rid of your lands, or whatever. Losing to that kind of crazy BS that's just like, oh, you got me. Like, that's fine. It hurts, it sucks, but it's fine. Losing because the application itself has a limitation on it that is impossible for me to avoid. Possible for anyone to avoid. That's the problem that I see here. Not losing because he's cleverly outplayed me. Losing because the application says, no, you lose. Like, if this were to happen in a tournament, the judge would come by and he would say, okay, no, like, you're done. Or it's a draw. But unfortunately, there is no draw in Magic, and there's no rule against infinite looping. So the game can't say, all right, neither one of you lose, we're just going to call a no contest here. And the game can't also say, you've Nexused 50 times. Sorry, you're done. So there's no way for this match to end except for one of us to concede. Honestly, I'm too curious to concede at this point. I figure I'll go for another 15 minutes. You know, this went on for about 2 or 3 minutes before I started recording, and then this entire thing was about 15 minutes before he finally conceded. Spoiler alert, he eventually concedes, and that's how the match ends. I was prepared to go for a half an hour, possibly even longer, before I just gave up. Like, I was literally willing to just say, all right, at a half an hour mark, I am just going to go make myself dinner. I'm going to leave the game up. I'm going to let myself time out. I'm going to see what happens. And I'm just going to leave Shadow Play running, and we'll see what happens. Do I lose on the second timeout, or does it just keep going? Does he concede? Does it force me to concede? What happens? Unfortunately, I didn't get to that point. I only got to the 15-minute mark, and he conceded. So I have no idea what the win condition is here. The answer is really simple, because obviously when this first started happening to me, the second time, I was like, well, what is the answer to this? And people that I've talked to are not super familiar with paper Magic either. And all of the discussion on Reddit is obviously just around, ban the card. Yeah, whatever. Don't ban the card. Ban the card, don't ban the card. I don't care. Put in a way to stop this nonsense. And it turns out that in paper Magic, there's a rule against that. There's a rule against infinite looping. So, I mean, there are ways to fix Nexus of Fate, obviously. Don't shuffle it back into the deck. Put it on the bottom. You know, like Sanguine Sacrament. You can't infinitely gain life with Sanguine Sacrament because it goes to the bottom. You have to shuffle your deck to get it back up. You have to fish for it, bring it back out. It's close to infinite, and it's possible to get infinite. I've done it before. But it's difficult. You know, it takes some planning, and it gives your opponent some time to counter it. And of course, you can counter it. And, you know, it's life. So if you don't counter the spell, you know, I've had matches where I'm up against like a Gruul deck, and he's got like a Carnage Tyrant with the Helm of the Host, and so there's 5 Carnage Tyrants on the board, and that's doing obscene amounts of damage, and I'm saying with Sacramenting for 60 life, and then, you know, a couple turns later, all of that life is gone, and I have to Sacrament again. Like, there's a way to play against that. There's a way to play against March of the Multitudes, because you can Cleansing Nova. You can settle the wreckage. You know, you do a lot of things against that, as you see here. He did cleanse that a while ago. Nexus of Fate has one way to play against it, and that's to exile it. Not to discard it. Because if you discard it, it doesn't hit the graveyard. It goes back into the library and shuffles into the library. So it's possible that it'll end up near the top. If it goes to the bottom, at least they have to find a way to get it back without completely milling themselves out. So the only way to get rid of it, at least that I'm aware of, is Devious Cover-Up, because that exiles the card. But then, of course, you're playing blue because it's Nexus of Fate, so naturally you're going to have your own counters. So I'm going to Devious Cover it, and then he's going to negate the Devious Cover-Up, and then I'm going to Sinister Sabotage his negate, and then he's going to Sinister, and it's going to stack until somebody fails, and then the Nexus of Fate gets exiled, or it doesn't, and then he draws his other Nexus of Fate. It's dumb. So put it on the bottom of the deck, and you kind of avoid that. Now he's got to play something to shuffle his deck and get it back. Or I maybe throw it in the discard pile. Don't let it go back into the deck. Let it hit the discard pile. And if you want it to be a card that can be reused, if you want it to be stupid powerful because it's a promo card, because it's a mythic rare, because it's 7 mana, then give it Jumpstart. Like, I would be completely okay with a Nexus that is Jumpstartable. Because then you Primal Wellspring your Nexus of Fate, and you've got 2 extra turns coming. It hits the discard pile, and then you Jumpstart it, and you Primal Wellspring it again, and you've got another 2, and now it's exiled. Now you got 4 turns. 4 turns will basically win you the game. Should basically win you the game. If you're in the losing position, then that will get you back on your feet and stabilize, and then tip the scales in your favor. If you're already ahead, then it's done. Game's over. So it's still a game-ending card, but it's at least a game-ending card that has a definitive endpoint. You know, or just completely get rid of it. I think I've mentioned in like a few Reddit posts and things that there are cards in various TCGs, like in Redemption and Star Trek CCG, in DBZ CCG, in Lord of the Rings TCG. There are cards that are banned because they are so stupidly powerful. But they are either banned because of the specific rules on the card. Like in DBZ, there is a whole set of cards that is designed to be dumb that's just banned from tournaments. And Magic even has that. So make Nexus that kind of card that says, like, oh, you can have it and you can play with it for fun, you can play with it with your friends, you know, bring it to Friday Night Magic and we'll say, okay, we're going to have some fun Nexus builds and we're going to see who can BS each other the hardest. You know, let it be that card, but ban it in competitive play. I just think in Magic Arena right now, it is not a card that should be here in the game, simply because of the way the game works. If they would implement that rule that you can't infinitely just Nexus without advancing the state of the game, then, I mean, that would be enough for me. Because then you could Nexus a few times, and then if nothing changes, like if he gets into this situation, this would have happened, like, what happened 15 minutes ago. Anyway, that's my thoughts, my little ramblings. Same thing everyone else is saying here. No, I hope that Wizards fixes this soon, because I don't want to do this again.